The 1979 revolution in Iran is often presented as an Islamic revolution, but in reality it was a popular uprising of the oppressed. It was the voice of those who were fed up with the Shah's tyranny, imperialist exploitation and economic injustice. This movement included students, workers, peasants and the urban poor. Unfortunately, the revolution was later hijacked by the religious elite. Every revolution is rooted in material conditions. By the 1970s, Iran was grappling with deep economic and social contradictions. The Shah had launched reforms under the banner of the White Revolution, but these so-called reforms benefited feudal landlords, military officers and American capitalists. In reality, peasants were uprooted from their lands, leaving them unemployed and homeless. They were forced to migrate to cities where they ended up as low-paid, unprotected workers in disorganized labor sectors. In cities, people faced rising housing costs, stagnant wages, and increasing unemployment. Inflation was rampant, and everyday life was becoming more difficult. The state tried to crush the rising discontent by all means. The Shah's secret police, SAVAK, arrested, imprisoned, and killed thousands. Student unions, labor organizations, and the press were silenced. Any criticism was labeled anti-Shah or anti-national. But as Mao once said, where there is oppression, there is resistance. The Iranian people began to organize themselves. Students, workers, peasants, women, and national minorities all united to raise their voices against the Shah's regime. This wasn't just a religious movement, as it's often portrayed, it was a broad-based popular rebellion. In the beginning, groups like Mujahideen-e-Khalq and Fadaiyan-e-Khalq, which included both Islamic and Marxist ideologies, played key leadership roles. These groups not only resisted state oppression but also gave the movement a strong ideological and organizational backbone. However, when the Shah fled, these revolutionary forces couldn't seize full control. A vacuum of leadership was created, and Ayatollah Khomeini and the religious clerics filled that void. The people who had struggled for freedom ended up with a new theocratic regime that wasn't much different from the old one. The system established under Khomeini suppressed dissent, banned independent student and labor organizations, and introduced a new form of religious authoritarianism. This leadership turned the revolution into yet another form of oppression. This happened because the people lacked their own independent leadership and ideological clarity. The Iranian Revolution teaches us that if revolutionary leadership falls into the hands of reactionary forces, the revolution can be turned into its opposite. The Shah was not just a local dictator, he was a loyal agent of American imperialism. US companies had control over Iran's oil wealth. Land reforms, pushed through by American advisors, turned self-sufficient farmers into landless laborers. American dominance extended into Iran's industries and even cultural institutions, where Iranian identity was distorted in the name of modernization. When students, workers, and the urban poor took to the streets, their slogans weren't just against the Shah, they were also against imperialism. Anti-imperialist sentiment was strong across the country. The exploitation of resources, suppression of culture, and economic control by foreign powers created a revolutionary consciousness among the people. This revolution shows us that when the masses are organized, they can shake even the strongest regimes. But if they don't have revolutionary leadership, the movement can easily be co-opted. As Mao said, without revolutionary theory, there can be no revolutionary movement. In Iran, although revolutionary ideas existed, they did not gain the power they needed to lead the uprising to its true goals. The Iranian people demonstrated great awareness and courage, but they lacked the leadership to guide that energy toward real liberation. This revolution stands as a historical example, a struggle that could not reach its destination, but from which valuable lessons can be learned. The people of Iran showed that they could rise against injustice, but it also became clear that without revolutionary leadership, the dream of freedom can turn into a new form of subjugation. Slogans like "Death to America" and "Death to Israel" were more than emotional chants, they reflected deep anti-imperialist sentiment. But this rage lacked revolutionary organization and class direction. The Islamic Republic, born from the revolution, initially echoed these slogans, yet it quickly adopted diplomatic relations with global powers like China and the USSR, not as acts of solidarity, but as state-to-state capitalist dealings. This shows that without class struggle and ideological clarity, anti-imperialism becomes a hollow phrase, even usable by reactionary forces. As Mao warned, only class-rooted anti-imperialism avoids slipping into reactionary nationalism. In Iran, revolutionary energy was co-opted by religious nationalism, and the revolutionary potential was transformed into the rule of a new elite. A revolution needs more than mass participation, it requires a revolutionary party. In 1979, the Iranian people, workers, women, minorities, rose in powerful revolt. But no unified, Marxist leadership existed. Communist groups like the Fedai, Mojahedin-e-Khalq, and Tufan were ideologically divided and disorganized. This leadership vacuum was filled by Ayatollah Khomeini and the Islamic bourgeoisie. Islam was turned into a political tool to suppress class struggle under the false unity of the Ummah. Workers' councils, shuras, which had emerged as expressions of popular power, were dismantled as threats to Islamic rule. Mao emphasized, a revolution is defeated the moment its leadership falls into the hands of non-revolutionary forces. In Iran, this is exactly what happened. The result, capitalism survived under religious disguise. Women played a critical role in the revolution, organizing, protesting, demanding freedom. But once the Islamic Republic took power, new forms of patriarchal control were imposed. Mandatory hijab laws were enforced, and women's political rights were curtailed. National minorities like Kurds, Baloch, and Arabs, who sought cultural and political autonomy, were violently repressed in the name of national unity. Mao rightly said, without the liberation of women, half of humanity remains enslaved. A revolution that suppresses gender and national liberation cannot be called revolutionary. In Iran, both were sacrificed to maintain state centralization and Islamic authority. After the Shah's fall, class struggle intensified, but power went to the reactionary Islamic bourgeoisie. The regime systematically eliminated revolutionary forces. Marxists, feminists, national activists, all were persecuted. The Islamic State preserved capitalist exploitation, replacing the monarchy with a religious dictatorship. Marxism became heresy and revolution was rebranded as sedition. Mao warned that counter-revolution cloaked in religion is especially dangerous. It manipulates people's consciousness. In Iran, the state used Islam to dismantle workers' organizations, silence dissent, and protect capitalist interests, all under the banner of Islamic Revolution. The Iranian Revolution proves that mass uprisings alone cannot lead to socialism. Without a proletarian party, revolutionary ideology, and class institutions, any movement, no matter how powerful, can be hijacked. Religious nationalism became the instrument of counter-revolution. The state used revolutionary language but acted in defense of class power. This experience underscores a vital lesson. Without unity between gender, national, and class liberation, no revolution can succeed. If leadership fails, revolution turns into reaction. If the people are not organized, power will always find new ways to dominate them, even in revolutionary disguise.